Opening day is among us, so that means the return of power rankings. Let's just get right to it here. Let's talk the Arizona Diamondbacks. I like this Diamondbacks team. I think there's a lot of surprise potential, similar to the Cleveland Guardians last year. I think the Diamondbacks absolutely could win a wild card in the National League. Taking a look at this team, I like this team because there's a good mix of veterans and youth. When I'm talking about the youth, I'm talking about Corbin Carroll. I'm talking about Alek Thomas, Gabriel Moreno, Jake McCarthy. These are four really solid young players. And then when I'm talking about veterans, you're looking at guys like Ketel Marte, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., Christian Walker. I like this lineup. I think there's a lot of potential to it. Now, with the starting pitching, I think maybe they are an arm short here. I do like Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly. Madison Bumgarner, I don't think he's ever going to get back to what he was doing when he was with the Giants, but at least he'll give you some innings at this point, right? But when I'm looking at guys like Ryan Nelson and Dre Jameson, two good young arms, I think they could do a lot for this pitching staff. The bullpen is a bit of a question mark, but I am seeing a couple of names. You got Ginkel here, you got Chafin, you got Mantiply. I think this Diamondbacks team is pretty good. Now, I'm not going to go crazy, but I'll give them a good solid B to start off these power rankings. Let's talk the Atlanta Braves, and oh boy, this team is looking really good. I think there's a chance they could lead the major leagues in wins this year. This team is that good. Take a look at the offense. I mean, my goodness, you got bats all over the place. Ronald Acuna Jr., I think, is a guy you got to keep an eye on this year. Came back from knee surgery last year, didn't quite look like himself, wasn't bad by any means, but I definitely think Ronald Acuna Jr. can take another step forward, and you got some great bats in here. Matt Olson and Riley providing a lot of power. Michael Harris II, an electric Rookie of the Year season last year. Ozzie Albies missed time last year. He's going to get back to playing full time. Sean Murphy, your newest addition from this past offseason. Love Sean Murphy, one of the best all-around catchers in the game. Let's see if Eddie Rosario can have a bounce-back year this year. Love the starting pitching. Fried, Strider, Morton. You got a couple of guys on the IL. Kyle Wright. Can Soroka ever make it back? I hope so. But there's a lot of good starting pitching. And when we're talking about the bullpen, it's one of the deepest bullpens in Major League Baseball. You do have Raisel Iglesias on the IL to start things off, but AJ Minter, one of the best relievers in the game, he'll step right into the closer role until Iglesias comes back. You got some just arms all over the place. Hey, Kirby Yates, can he make a return to his 2019 form? We'll just have to wait and see. But I like Joe Jimenez, McHugh. Nick Anderson is a pretty low-key guy to keep an eye on this year. This guy's had a lot of success in his career. Liking everything about this Braves team. They are absolutely World Series contenders. I'm going to put them in the S tier. The Baltimore Orioles, they went on a surprising run last year, exceeding expectations. Not a lot of people picked them to win more than 70 games last year, but they finished with a record of 83-79. They were a fun team to watch. They were in the mix for a wild card down the stretch, but I really like the way this Orioles team looks. Good young players on this team. Adley Rutschman would have won Rookie of the Year last year if it wasn't for Julio Rodriguez. He was absolutely fantastic, and he's only going to keep getting better. I think Adley Rutschman wins an MVP at some point in his career. Gunnar Henderson, the next young electric player to keep an eye out for. Really excited to see what he can do. And then you got other just solid pieces in this lineup as well. Cedric Mullins, I think he got off to a slow start last year. He looked better in the second half. I think he's going to be pretty good. Anthony Santander, he's going to bring you some power. You got guys that can make contact like Adam Frazier, guys good on defense like a Jorge Mateo. I think this Orioles lineup is pretty decent. The starting pitching is a little thin to me. I see a bunch of, threes, fours in this rotation. Guys like Gibson, Kramer. You just got Irvin. There's Gibson and Irvin with their newest additions this past offseason. It's not the best looking rotation, but if they can give you the innings, they'll have a chance to win. The bullpen, I think, is a bit better. I like Felix Bautista at the back end. He took over in the closer role last year. I thought looked pretty good. And then one other guy to keep an eye out for is Grayson Rodriguez down in the minor leagues. A lot of people thought he would be with the team on opening day, but he didn't look too good in spring. He's going to get some more work down in the minor leagues before he comes back up, but he will be back up eventually. Keep an eye out for DL Hall, too. Another young arm that they can promote at some point during this season. I think this Orioles team, I like the way they're looking, and a lot of people, I think, are looking at this Orioles team kind of like the Tigers last year, where the Tigers, they looked good 2 years ago, and then they took a step back last year. I think the Orioles can keep taking a step forward. I think they're different from that Tigers team. I'm going to put them at a B. Up next, we have the Boston Red Sox. I'm going to temper Giraffe Nick Robbie as much as I can here, but I do think this team has potential to be good this year, and I think they could go after a wild card spot. Taking a look at the lineup, yeah, no more Xander Bogaerts, but I think this lineup actually is a bit deeper than the lineup last year. You got more options top to bottom here. Really excited about Masataka Yoshida. He did great in the World Baseball Classic coming over from Japan. I think this is a bat to keep an eye on for this year, and obviously Rafael Devers, one of the best hitters in the game, bringing Justin Turner, solid clubhouse clubhouse guy, like the right-handed bat at Fenway Park. Speaking of right-handed bats, Adam Duvall, that power bat at Fenway Park, I think could do a lot of damage. So I'm excited about that. Young player in Tristan Casas. This guy gets on base a lot. Kike Hernandez is going to be back. He missed a lot of time last year. Good energy kind of player. Plays well in the field. He's going to get the job done with the bat. I'm excited about this lineup. I think this lineup is a bit underrated in my opinion. The starting pitching is more upside at this point. There's question marks with health. You got guys on the IL. Brian Bale, a young guy to keep an eye out for. Garrett Whitlock. Let's see how he does as a starter this year. Does he end up going back to the bullpen? Not quite sure. James Paxton, does he even pitch? But Corey Kluber, your newest addition in the rotation for this year, veteran guy. I think he's going to bring some stability. Chris Sale, can he finally put together a full healthy season? If he does, we know what Chris Sale can do. You know, a couple other guys here. Nick Pivetta, does he stay in the rotation? He has had some ups and downs over the last year. We'll have to wait and see. Tanner Houck, I think, is more of a bullpen guy at this point. But speaking of the bullpen, I like the bullpen. Kenley Jansen, bringing him in as your closer. Bringing Chris Martin. Joely Rodriguez is on the IL, but that'll be a good lefty. Really like Richard Blyer coming in. Doesn't give up a lot of hard contact. John Schreiber had a good season last year. You got guys down in the minor leagues like Brian Mata, I think, who can come help out in the rotation, maybe in the bullpen. I think this Red Sox team is pretty good. Now, I don't think they're amazing by any means, but I don't see a bad team here like a lot of people are saying. I see a team that is in the B tier. Let's talk the Chicago Cubs. They had a productive offseason, bringing in most notably Dansby Swanson, a solid all-around shortstop, one of the best shortstops in the game. Had a breakout year last year. Good with the bat, great with the glove. Love Dansby Swanson on this Cubs team. Just signed Nico Horner to an extension. He had a really good year last year. Let's see if he can keep getting better. Cody Bellinger, that was a name they brought in. Can he get back to being the more productive Cody Bellinger? Now, I'm not saying the MVP Cody Bellinger, but can he get back more towards that kind of a player? I think he has it in him. Fresh start in Chicago might be the best thing for him. Ian Happ, I think, is really solid. You brought in Mancini. You brought in Hosmer. I think this lineup is pretty decent. I don't think it's the worst lineup out there at all. Looking at the starting pitching, you brought in Jamison Tyone. I thought that was really solid. To go along with Stroman, Steele, and Tyone, I think that's pretty good. Not too bad for the top of the rotation. Keep your eyes out for Hayden Wesneski. He came over from the Yankees in the Scott Efros trade. Like Hayden Wesneski, I think there's breakout potential here. Now, the bullpen is a little thin to me. You got some guys here. Michael Fulmer, he's been pretty decent as a reliever over the last couple of years. Adbert Alzolay, look out for him. That's an electric arm. Now, this Cubs team, I think, is pretty decent. And don't forget, Seiya Suzuki. He's going to come back eventually. Has a strained oblique. Don't forget about Kyle Hendricks. I mean, he has something going on with the shoulder last year, so let's see if he can come back at some point this year. But the Cubs, I think, are a pretty solid team. I want to see if they can put it together. I want to put them at a B, but for now, I'm going to stay at a C, but I think they could easily move up to that B tier in the first few weeks of the season. Staying in Chicago, let's talk the Chicago White Sox. A disappointing season for them last year after a lot of people were picking them to make the World Series, but they fell short, missing the playoffs only with a record of 81-81. But when I'm looking at this team, there's still names all over the place. This lineup looks great. Tim Anderson, Andrew Benintendi you brought in this past offseason, Eloy Jimenez, that's going to bring you some power. Yoan Moncada, bad season last year, but he was looking pretty good in the World Baseball Classic and this spring. Andrew Vaughn, I think this is a bat that's going to keep getting better and better. Taking a look at someone like a Luis Robert. This guy has not hit his potential yet, his full potential. This guy is superstar written all over him. I like this lineup when you take a look at it as a whole. And then you also got someone like an Oscar Colas, who I think could be a potential rookie of the year. Yasmani Grandal has bounce back ability. This guy was getting on base a lot a couple of years ago and a bad season last year. Let's see if he can get back to what he was doing a couple of years ago. But overall, I like the lineup. I love the starting pitching. Dylan Cease, Lance Lynn. Lucas Giolito needs to bounce back a bit from last year, but I think he can do it. I like this rotation with Clevinger and Kopech at the back end. Bullpen looks really good. Now, Liam Hendrick, now, best of luck to him, undergoing cancer treatment. That guy's going to be just a rock star. He's going to get through it, and he's going to be back with this team in no time, I think. And but without him, the bullpen still looks pretty good. Kendall Graveman, bummer. Got Joe Kelly Fight Club, love him. I think this is a pretty decent-looking bullpen. I like this White Sox team. For me, I'm going to put them at a B. That might be surprising. I could see people maybe putting them at a C. But I think this is a really good team. I think they will bounce back this year with a new manager. I like the White Sox for this year. Let's talk the Cincinnati Reds. They're in rebuild mode, but they got some fun young players to keep an eye out for. Taking a look at the rotation, Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo. Imagine when these guys fully put it together in the major leagues. That is going to be a nasty 1-2 punch. These guys were really good last year. I'm really excited to see what they can do this year. But when I'm looking at young players, I'm going to keep my eyes on Elly De La Cruz. Look at the year that he had last year between A-ball and AA. He had a slash line of 304, a 359 on base, a 586 slugging. He had 28 home runs and 47 stolen bases. What the heck is going on? He needs to cut down on those strikeouts a little bit, but I'm excited to see what he can do. He's the number 8 prospect for Baseball America coming into this year. Really excited about that. But when I'm looking at some of these other guys in the lineup, Jonathan India needs to bounce back a little bit. Tyler Stevenson, that's a good young bat. So for the Reds, we're looking at youth. There's not a whole lot here. I'm going to go F. Up next, we have the Cleveland Guardians. Last year, I picked this team to be my surprise team of the year, and boy, oh boy, did they do just that, winning the division with a record of 92-70, and they only got better in the offseason. Taking a look here, you added Josh Bell. I like that add for the lineup. Mike Zunino, I think, is a pretty underrated signing, but when I'm looking at other parts of this lineup, Jose Ramirez, obviously one of the best players in the game. Steven Kwan, good rookie season last year, great at getting on base. Really like this lineup overall. I think it's really solid. And taking a look at the rotation here. Now, when I'm looking at this rotation, to me personally, it is a little thin. They did get the job done last year with some of these guys at the back, like Savali, Quantrill, and Plesac. But when I'm looking at this rotation as a whole, I do like Bieber and McKenzie. I'm just wondering if they're going to be able to repeat what they did last year. I do like Bieber and McKenzie. McKenzie will be back eventually, going to be on the IL for a little bit. But when I'm looking at pitching here, oh man, I love this bullpen. Clase at the back, Karinchak, love me some Karinchak. Eli Morgan was pretty underrated last year. Keep an eye out for him. But then you got other guys in this bullpen. This is a good bullpen, one of the top bullpens in Major League Baseball last year. The Guardians, to me, I think you could go either way when it goes to their rankings. I think you could put them in an A, but for me, I'm not too high on that rotation. It is a good lineup. It's not one of the best lineups in Major League Baseball, but it's a solid lineup for the most part. For the Guardians, I will go B for right now. I do think the White Sox will be back in it this year. I think there's going to be a bit of a dogfight in this Central for this year, so I'm excited for that. But for the Guardians, I honestly would say like a B+ for the Guardians right now, but since I don't have a B+ tier, we're going to go B. Up next, the Colorado Rockies. Man, there's just not a lot of hope for the Rockies, but when I do look at this team, you got names. You got Chris Bryant. You added Jerickson Profar. CJ Cron is fun. Ryan McMahon is pretty decent. Elehuris Montero, this is a guy they got back in the Nolan Arenado trade. I'm looking to see what he can do. He's a guy that could bring you some power, and at Coors Field, he could be a breakout candidate this year. Look out for him. So it's not a great lineup, but it's got names in it. It's got names. When I'm looking at the rotation, kind of really the same thing. You got a couple of names in Marquez and Freeland, but really, how good are they going to be? There's not a whole lot in the bullpen. You got Bard at the back. You got Pierce Johnson. His team has a lot of holes in it, but overall, I'm just not seeing a whole lot with the Colorado Rockies. I'm not going to put them at an F because they do have some talent on this team, but I'll go with a D. Let's talk the Detroit Tigers. Man, they really flamed out last year. A lot of people were thinking they were going to take another step after a good 2021 season where they exceeded expectations, and then they signed guys like Javier Baez and Eduardo Rodriguez. But man, they took a step back last year, finishing with a record of 66-96, 30 games under 500. But there is still potential in this lineup. Torkelson, I think, is going to have a breakout year this year. Look out for him. Austin Meadows missed a lot of time last year. Can he get back to being the Austin Meadows that we saw with the Tampa Bay Rays? Riley Green, fun young player. I'm looking for him to have himself a good season. Javier Baez, can this guy do better than he did last year? He was not very good last year. I'm not expecting a ton out of Javier Baez, but I am expecting some home runs, some RBIs. He'll be good in the field. I think there is potential for this Tigers team. Keep an eye out. I think Matt Vierling has breakout potential in him. Keep an eye out for him as well. When I do look at the rotation, I think the rotation is okay. Eduardo Rodriguez is fine at the top of the rotation. Matthew Boyd back in Detroit. Spencer Turnbull back from Tommy John. Some young starting pitching. I just don't really know how far it's going to go. There's not a whole lot with this bullpen with the Tigers. For me, I'm going to go with a D. The defending World Series champions. Man, this Astros team is still looking really good, even without Justin Verlander. But this lineup lineup still looking amazing. You added Jose Abreu, one of the better bats in the game. Yordan Alvarez, Bregman, Tucker, Pena, sure, Julio Rodriguez. He won the Rookie of the Year last year, but Jeremy Pena, he won World Series MVP. He won the ALCS MVP. Love me some Jeremy Pena. But this lineup is still looking really good. Even without Verlander, still got some great pitching. Valdez, Javier, Urquidy, Garcia, Brown. Good solid 1 through 5. I'm excited about Hunter Brown this year. Sure, they'll probably have some growing pains, but overall, I like the rotation. One of the deepest bullpens in Major League Baseball. This team is going to continue to do really well. And then you're going to get Jose Altuve back at some point. Michael Brantley. If Michael Brantley's healthy, I think he's a really solid player. Lance McCullers Jr., he's on the IL. Let's see if his elbow is going to be good for this year. But even without these guys, this team still looks really good. Imagine if they get those guys back fully healthy. This is an easy S tier for me. The Kansas City Royals. This is a fun team. You got some fun names on here. I love me some Vinny Pasquantino, looking to see what kind of damage he can do after a successful season last year. Bobby Witt Jr., this guy he's got just all the potential in the world. I'm excited to see what kind of a year he can have for this year. He's going to give you some average, a little bit of power. He's going to bring you some speed. He'll be good defensively. I do love me some Bobby Witt Jr., good young player. Got some other younger players like an MJ Melendez. You got a Michael Massey, had some success last year. Let's see what they can do. Look at that, Jackie Bradley Jr., Red Sox legend on the Royals. He made the team. Zach Greinke, that's pretty much it for the rotation. Actually, no, I take that back. Brady Singer. I think Brady Singer can keep getting better. Let's see what he can do. I'm hoping for more out of him. There is potential there. There are some names in this bullpen. I do like Scott Barlow. I wonder if he ends up staying with the Royals this year. Aroldis Chapman, if he can get himself back on track, this is a guy you could trade at the trade deadline to a contender. And I would think a team would love to have Chapman if he gets himself right. So I think that was a good ad by the Royals, but I'm just not seeing a whole lot with this team. The starting pitching is just pretty mediocre as a whole. There's not really anything in the bullpen. The lineup still needs work, in my opinion. But they got some names. I'll go with the D. The LA Angels. We always want to put this team in the higher tiers because you got Ohtani and Trout, two of the best players in the world, but they always stink. They never find a way to get it done. But you know what? I like this Angels team this year. This lineup is deeper with additions of Brandon Drury. You added Hunter Renfroe. You brought in a Gio Urshela. You traded for Logan O'Hoppe last year. I like that. I like these additions along with Anthony Rendon coming back after wrist surgery last year. This guy's one of the worst contracts in Major League Baseball, but man, this guy can still give you a whole lot. Gets on base, still has power. I think Anthony Rendon, look for a comeback player of the year season from him this year. I think this lineup has top 10 potential, but will they get it done? We'll just have to wait and see. I actually like the rotation. Ohtani's amazing, of course, but Sandoval, Anderson, Detmers, Suarez, these are guys I think could give you a really solid rotation after Ohtani. Tyler Anderson, can he do what he did with the Dodgers? I'm not quite sure about that. But Sandoval, underrated guy. Detmers, young guy who's going to keep getting better. I like this rotation, to be completely honest with you. The bullpen is a little thin. I like some names in this bullpen. There's just not a whole lot that's inspiring me right now when I'm looking at projections. You're seeing a lot of 4 ERAs. Aaron Loop is just under a 4 along with Jose Quijada. The bullpen needs work, but if they're in it at the deadline, could you make a trade? Could you maybe swing a deal for a guy like Aroldis Chapman, like I mentioned earlier? I think the bullpen will need something eventually, but will they be in contention? We'll just have to wait and see. I like this Angels team. I always like this Angels team coming in, but I do like this team more than I have over the last couple of years, so I will say that. For me, I will put the Angels at a B. Let's stay in LA and talk the LA Dodgers. Man, this team is good every single year, but they are looking a little weaker this year. No Trey Turner at shortstop for the Dodgers, but I still think this Dodgers team is going to be really good. You got Miguel Rojas, who's great with the glove out there. Yeah, he's not going to really give you a whole lot with the bat like Turner did, but he'll give you a good glove. I think that's really solid to have, but when you got bats like Betts and Freeman, I think you still have a really good-looking lineup, in my opinion. Will Smith, I think, is underrated. Max Muncy going to give you power. JD Martinez, I'm looking for a good season out of JD Martinez. I think that's going to be a fun addition for them. I think this is a really fun-looking lineup when I take a look at the whole thing. Sure, with Turner, it's way more fun, but I still like this lineup. And James Outman, look out for him. I think he could really contribute this year. The rotation, it is looking thinner than it has in recent years, but you still got Urias, you still got Kershaw, Dustin May coming back after Tommy John. This is a young electric arm. Syndergaard is fine at the back end. Young arm and Ryan Pepio. But what I like about the Dodgers is you still got pitching in the organization. Don't forget about a guy like Bobby Miller. Can he come out and help out the Dodgers this year. We'll have to wait and see. Bullpen is still looking really solid when you got guys like Phillips, Vizia, Gratterall. I like these guys at the back end. I still like this Dodgers team, and they're just a strong organization as a whole. Are they an S tier anymore? I feel like they've slipped a little out of there, but I still think they're a really good team. I'm going to go with an A for the Dodgers. The Miami Marlins, they're fun. Take a look at this team. You got some bats in this lineup. I mean, it's not an amazing looking lineup by any means, but I do like Luis Ariz. I love the MLB The Show cover boy and Jazz Chisholm. A full season, this guy could be absolutely electric. I mean, look at the projections. They're projecting him for 25 homers and 27 stolen bases. That's not too bad if you ask me. When I'm looking at other pieces here, Gene Segura, that was a good ad. Like I said, Luis Ariz, I think this is a really good addition for the top of the lineup. Makes a lot of contact, gets on base. I think that's good for them. Jorge Soler, I'm looking for more power out of him. Brian De La Cruz, look out for him. This guy's got breakout potential with him. Good advanced numbers last year. Love the rotation. Alcantara, Luzardo, Cabrera, breakout candidate. Trevor Rogers, bounce back candidate. Johnny Cueto, good veteran guy. Jesus Luzardo, remember, he was having some issues a couple of years ago, but he's looking a lot better with the Marlins. Can he keep getting better? I'm excited to see what he can do, but I like this rotation as a whole. Bullpen, you actually do have some names here. You got Puck, Floro, Barnes you added. You got Shagwa in here. Not a bad looking bullpen, to be completely honest with you. Overall, I do like this Marlins team. I think they're pretty fun looking. I wouldn't go a B, but I do think they're right around like a C+. So I'll go C tier for the Marlins. Let's talk the Milwaukee Brewers. When I think of the Brewers, I think of pitching. When I think of pitching, I think of Corbin Burnes. He's absolutely amazing. You got Corbin Burnes, Brandon Woodruff at the top of that rotation, Lauer, Peralta, Miley rounding out this rotation. I think that's a really solid 1 through 5. Don't forget, Aaron Ashby is here. Adrian Hauser is here. So you got some guys that will come back eventually, like their starting pitching. Speaking of the pitching, I love Devin Williams at the back end. Matt Bush is fine as a setup guy. I do worry a little bit about the rest of the bullpen. I feel like they could use another arm back there, but overall, do love the back end of it. When I'm looking at this lineup, it's a fun looking lineup. I love the addition of William Contreras. What a birthday gift for them, getting him in the Sean Murphy trade. I don't know how the heck the Brewers still even got in that trade. I don't get it. Love me some Willie Adames. Love me some Rowdy Tellez. Jesse Winker has bounce back potential. Garrett Mitchell has breakout potential. Look out for him. Yelich is Yelich. Is he going to be the Yelich that we saw, a few years ago? I'm not quite sure, but he's still going to be solid. He's still going to get on base, give you a little bit of power. He'll get some things done in that lineup. Overall, I think this is a solid Brewers team. Yet again, I think they'll be in contention for a wild card. I don't know if they're really going to be there for the division. I think that's the Cardinals division at this point, but they will be still involved in the wild card race. I'll go a B for the Brewers. The New York Mets, holy cow, what an offseason they had. They did lose Carlos Correa to the Twins, but even without him, they still had an amazing offseason, most notably adding Justin Verlander to replace Jacob deGrom in the rotation. You're going to have Verlander and Scherzer at the top of the rotation. Yeah, sure, they're getting a bit up there in age, 40 and 38 respectively, but these two guys kind of give me Randy Johnson, Curt Schilling vibes with the 2001 Diamondbacks. Schilling was 34 with the Diamondbacks. I think Johnson was around 37, 38. So a bit younger than these two guys, but kind of give me the same vibes. Two veteran guys that are still two of the top pitchers in the game leading into the playoffs. If you got those two guys at the top of your rotation in October, I think that's a threat that you don't want to mess with. When I'm looking at the rest of the rotation, you added some depth. Kadai Senga, really good stuff out of Japan. You added Jose Quintana. He did have to get surgery on his rib, but he will be back by halfway through the season. So you got depth in this rotation. I like Scherzer, Verlander at the top. David Peterson, I think, is a bit underrated. Look out for him. Carrasco as well. Love the starting pitching. When I'm looking at the lineup, to me, I like this lineup. I think they could use another bat to really cement themselves as a top, 1, 2, 3 team in the major leagues. But when I'm looking at their lineup 1 through 6, Nimmo, Marte, Lindor, Alonso, McNeil, Kana, that's really good if you ask me. I still feel like they needed a bat. Brett Baty, great bat. Let's see if he can come up eventually. I thought he was going to make the opening day roster. He did not. But the bullpen is looking thinner without Edwin Diaz. Man, that was a big loss. But you still got David Robertson as your closer, veteran guy that can get the job done at the back end. Ottavino, Brooks Raley, I thought was a pretty underrated ad for them. It's still a good bullpen, in my opinion. I feel like they need to add someone. Let's see if they make a move. But overall, this Mets team, they're really good. They'll be right there in contention for a World Series. I personally think S tier for me. Let's talk the Yankees. Their big offseason addition, besides bringing back Aaron Judge, was Carlos Rodon. He is going to start the year on the IL, but when he does come back, Cole and Rodon at the top of that rotation, that is going to be awesome. Now, you are having some health issues elsewhere in this rotation. Luis Severino going to be starting the year on the IL. Another issue with the lat, so they do lose some depth there, but you still have Cortez, Schmidt. There's a guy, I'm waiting to see if he can fully just put it together here in the major leagues. I don't know. Are we going to see anything out of Clark Schmidt? I remember this guy, Yankee fans were so excited about Clark Schmidt at one point. Domingo Germán is fine at the back end. Overall, the rotation, I think, will be fine. You're going to get Rodon and Severino back at some point. I think they could be a blessing in disguise. Have them be a bit more fresh for the rest of the season. They'll miss some time at the beginning of the year, but I think it'll be fine. Garrett Cole's Garrett Cole. I like the bullpen. It's not as deep looking as it has been in the past. They've had really deep bullpens, so that's kind of saying something. But even without as much depth as they've had in the past, this is still looking really good. Clay Holmes, Loaizaga, King, Peralta, Mauricio. You're gonna get Canely back eventually. Still a good bullpen if you ask me. I do like this Yankee bullpen. And the lineup, you didn't really do a whole lot for this lineup, but the big addition is Anthony Volpe, your future shortstop, your next Jeter. I think that was a really good move from the Yankees. I'm so glad they did this because I feel like Yankee teams in the last few years, they would have just put him in the minor leagues, but they did something different this time. They're finally just ahead of the curve, and they just went with a young kid here, not even 22 years old. I thought that was a great move for them. To me, putting him in the minor leagues, sure, he could have gotten him some more at-bats down there, but to me, you might as well just throw him into the water, throw him into the Bronx. I think he's going to be a fan favorite. He's going to be awesome. He's going to bring you just everything. He's going to bring you some power. He's going to bring you some speed. He's going to give you good defense. I'm liking Anthony Volpe. He's my rookie of the year pick for this year, but obviously you got other bats here. Judge, like I mentioned earlier, coming back for the long haul. LeMahieu, this is a guy I feel like people have forgotten about a little bit. DJ LeMahieu is still really solid. Hopefully a full year of health for him, and he's going to be good to go. I think Stan, look out for him. I think he could add even a bit more power than what he had last year. Donaldson has bounced back. Candidate all over him. I'm hoping Josh Donaldson gets himself back on track. But overall, I think it's a really solid Yankee team. In my opinion, I think this Yankees team is going to be right there in the American League. They're going to be right there with the Astros in the end. At least they should be there at the end with the Astros. I think they're an S tier team. I do feel like some people might put them as an A tier. For me, I will go S tier for the Yankees. The Oakland A's, another team that's in rebuild mode. There's not a whole lot with this team, but I'm going to have my eyes on some younger players like a Shea Langeliers and Esteury Ruiz. I think is interesting. In the rotation, you got guys like Kyle Muller, Shintaro Fujinami coming over from Japan. He's had some success over in Japan. Look out for him. Someone like Ken Waldichuk, JP Sears, some decent guys here. Don't forget Trevor May is in this bullpen. Jurice Familia as well. But overall, this Oakland A's team, they're not really going to be doing a whole lot. I'm going to keep this easy. I'm going to put them in the F tier. The Philadelphia Phillies, 2 wins away from a World Series last year. They got red hot at the right time. That Phillies team, man, they were so close to winning it all. But the Phillies, they're looking fun this year. When I'm looking at this lineup, the big addition is Trey Turner. Put him in this lineup with a Kyle Schwarber. You got JT Realmuto. That's not too bad if you ask me. You're going to get Bryce Harper back. Eventually, you won't have him at the beginning of the year because you got Tommy John. But overall, this lineup I think is going to be really good. You did lose Rhys Hoskins. That is a bit of a loss in power. Hopefully, Nick Castellanos can have a bounce back year. Alec Bohm, I'm looking for more power out of him this year. Young guys like Bryson Stott, Brandon Marsh, I think are fun. Overall, solid lineup if you ask me. Good starting pitching with Nola and Wheeler, one of the best 1-2 punches in the game. You added Taijuan Walker for the middle of the rotation. Matt Strahm going to be opening up the season in the rotation. Matt Strahm, I think this is a spot that you could find him in, making spot starts, opening games, going into the bullpen as well. Younger guy like Bailey Falter, I think he's fine. I would like more starting pitching for the Phillies. You do have Ranger Suarez on the IL with forearm tightness. Let's hope he's going to be good to go for the rest of the year. Looking at this bullpen, you've added a few guys here. Kimbrel, Soto. It's going to be interesting to see how this bullpen shakes out. I still like this Phillies team a lot. You're going to get Harper back eventually, like I said. I wouldn't put them as an S tier, but I do think they are an A tier. I'm looking to see what they can do for this year. Speaking of fun, how about the Pittsburgh Pirates? They're a fun-looking team this year. I like this lineup. You got young guys like O'Neal Cruz, Brian Hayes, Jack Sawinski. Brian Reynolds is Brian Reynolds. He's really solid. Andrew McCutcheon coming back to Pittsburgh. Love that. Ji-Man Choi coming in as well. You're going to have Carlos Santana Santana on this team as well. I think this lineup is pretty fun, honestly. I don't think it's an amazing lineup by any means, but you got some fun names. Speaking of fun names, Rich Hill is in the rotation. You got young guys like Mitch Keller, Roenzi Contreras, Johan Oviedo, man. I like some of these pictures here with Pittsburgh. You still got David Bednar in the bullpen. Will he stay with the Pirates long term? We'll have to wait and see. Do they trade him at the deadline? I don't know. I'm not really sold that they're going to trade him, but because he's under a lot of control, we'll just have to wait and see. But Brian Reynolds, I could see them signing to an extension. Look out for that. With Pittsburgh, they're still in rebuild mode. They're not there yet. But Pittsburgh, I think they're going to have some fun this year. I'll put them for now in the D tier. The San Diego Padres, their big offseason addition, Xander Bogaerts. I'm still crying myself to sleep every single night. I digress. But this lineup is looking stacked top to bottom. Bogaerts, Soto, Machado, Cronenworth. You added Carpenter, who looked like Barry Bonds at one point with the Yankees last year. Ha-Seong Kim going to be great with the glove. He'll give you a little bit with the bat as well. Trent Grisham, I'm looking for a little bit more with the bat, but he will give you a good glove out in center field. I think it's a great looking lineup. You got Nelson Cruz on the bench as well. With this rotation is going to be solid yet again. Yu Darvish, Blake Snell, Joe Musgrove going to be on the IL for a little bit to start the year, but he'll be back eventually. But even without him, it's still looking really deep. You added Michael Walker, you added Seth Lugo, you got Nick Martinez here still. Good depth with the starting pitching, good bullpen. Josh Hader, you're going to have on the IL for just a little bit. You're going to have Robert Suarez. He'll be back eventually. He looked really good in the postseason last year. But overall, still a pretty solid looking bullpen. I feel like they could use one more arm in this bullpen, even when Suarez does come back. This Padres team, they're built, especially this lineup, man. This lineup is just, oof. Like, look out for this. I wouldn't want to pitch against this lineup. But I think this team, they're going to be a force this year. I think they're going to be in the playoffs, and I think they're going to make a run at it. I'm going to put the Padres in the S tier. The Seattle Mariners, another fun team making the playoffs last year, getting bounced by the Houston Astros, but I think they're going to be in it yet again. Take a look at the Seattle Mariners. You had Julio Rodriguez last year. That was the star of the show. I don't see any sophomore slumps with Julio Rodriguez. I think he's going to keep being amazing year after year after year. But when I'm looking at other parts of this lineup, you added Teoscar Hernandez. You're going to pair him with Eugenio Suarez and a Ty France. You also added Colton Wong. I think it's good, especially for the defense. Jared Kelenic, I'm looking to see if this guy can finally put it together in the major leagues. But I think this lineup is going to be really solid this year. Taking a look at the starting rotation, I like this rotation a lot. Luis Castillo, Gilbert, George Kirby, these guys, two young electric arms. Love that. Robbie Ray, I think, is fine in the middle. Marco Gonzalez is a back-end guy, but overall, great starting pitching. I love Luis Castillo, one of my favorite pitchers in the game. Still a really solid-looking bullpen. Sewald and Munoz at the back end. Castillo and Brash here. Oof, this bullpen is really good. This Mariners team, I think, is really fun. I think they could make a run at the West this year. I don't know. The Astros are just so good year after year. Everyone wants to always pick against the Astros. I think if there is a year, if you do want to pick against the Astros, could it be this year? I think you could make an argument for it. Could the Mariners go after that division? I'm not going to pick against the Astros until they actually lose it. For me, I think this Mariners team, they're really good. I don't think they're quite an S tier yet. I'm going to put them in an A, but I'm excited to see what they do this year. The San Francisco Giants, they're in a tough division with the Padres and the Dodgers. I think the Diamondbacks are going to make some noise this year. So what could the Giants do this year? I'm not quite sure, but I think they could go on a bit of a run. When I'm looking at this Giants team, the first thing that I think of is the starting pitching. I love Logan Webb, one of my favorite pitchers in the game. And I think you got a pretty solid 5 here overall if you have guys like Manaea have a bounce back season, which I think he will. I think he's going to be better with the Giants this year than he was with the Padres. A more spacious ballpark. I think it's going to work in his favor. Cobb, Stripling, Wood. I think it's a pretty good 1 through 5, to be completely honest with you. When I'm looking at the back end of the bullpen, I love Camilo Duvall. Taylor Rogers is fine here. I think it's a good looking bullpen. Honestly, I think they could maybe use another arm here, but overall, I think this is really good. Tyler Rogers in here as well. Good looking bullpen. When I'm looking at the lineup, I feel like the lineup could use a bat. It would look really good with Aaron Judge here, but hey, you got Arson Judge though. Michael Conforto, he was your consolation prize, bit of a wild card. How's he going to do after missing last year? Hey, if he's fully healthy, Michael Conforto, we know what he can do. He's had success in the past. Like some of these other guys, Jock is Jock. I think he's still going to keep being fun. But overall, I'm not a big fan of the lineup, to be completely honest with you. I like the starting pitching. I think the bullpen is fine. But overall, when I'm looking at this Giants team, I'm not looking at anything more than a C. But I think this team, they got underdog potential to them. The St. Louis Cardinals, my World Series pick before the 2022 season, that crapped out. But the St. Louis Cardinals, they're going to keep being a really good team. I love this offense. When I'm looking at Arenado and Goldschmidt in the middle, that makes me excited. But then it makes me more excited when I see Wilson Contreras in this lineup as well, along with a young Jordan Walker. Oh, he's going to be great. You got Tyler O'Neill, a bounce-back candidate. Love me some Donovan and Nootbaar at the top here. Tommy Edman, I love Tommy Edman. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the game. He's not going to do a ton with the bat, but he's going to put the bat on the ball. He's going to put the balls in play. He's going to hit some homers here and there. He'll hit for average. He'll steal some bases. I like Tommy Edman. I really do. And he has versatility as well. I think that's where he brings value to his team, or to this team. But overall, this lineup is really good. But taking a look at the rotation, I feel like it's full of threes, honestly. Miles Michaelis, I think, is fine. Jack Flaherty, I feel like he has not hit his full potential. I'm not sure we're going to get out of him. He's only 27 years old. Jack Flaherty, can he finally take it up a notch? There was at one point people were thinking this is the next ace of your staff. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy. I like Montgomery. I like Woodford. I like Matz here. I think it's a good rotation, but and Adam Wainwright will be back eventually as well. I feel like it's just lacking like that clear-cut ace. So rotation, though, I think is fine. Bullpen, I still think looks really good. Ryan Helsley, one of the best closers in the game. Gallegos here in the setup role. Palante, Hicks. I think it is a good-looking bullpen. This Cardinals team is really good. I don't think they're quite at an S tier. I feel like you need just an ace guy at the top of that rotation. I don't see like a clear-cut ace in this rotation, so I think that holds them back from an S tier, but definitely an A tier for me. Let's talk the Tampa Bay Rays. I'm going to be honest, I'm not really sure what you're going to get out of the Rays this year. I know every year they always find a way to make it to the playoffs, but I don't know what it is. This year I'm not too high on the Rays. I don't know why, but I guarantee you that will come back and bite me in the butt. They'll probably end up winning the division somehow. But the Rays, I do like this lineup. You got Wander Franco and Brandon Lau coming back hopefully for full seasons this year. I love Randy Rosarina. Yandy Diaz was an on-base machine last year. Got some power with Paredes. Can he keep it going this year? Overall, I think this lineup has potential to be a top 10 lineup in the game. I think it's pretty fun. When I'm looking at the rotation, I love McClanahan at the top. I just wonder about Eflin. He's had some injury problems in the past. I feel like he hasn't been able to fully put it together. Jeffrey Springs and Rasmussen, they have good stuff, man, and they really put it together last year. I'm just wondering, coming off career highs in innings pitched, I'm wondering if they're going to be able to keep it going. But it's the Rays. They'll probably figure it out. And looking at this bullpen, they always have a good bullpen. When I'm looking here, you got Fairbanks, you got Jason Adam here at the back end. You know, Jalen Beeks is a good arm as well. Ryan Thompson as well. That's a pretty decent arm, good velocity. I feel like the bullpen, it's not as deep as it's looked in the past, but the one thing with the Rays is you got guys in the organization at AAA. They're always dipping into that farm system. It's a well-run organization. That's why you can never count this Rays team out. For me, I don't know what it is. I like the way this lineup is looking. I'm not too high on the starting pitching. Tyler Glasnow as well. He should be back. I forgot to mention him. But Tyler Glasnow, I'm a little unsure of because he had Tommy John, and now he has a strained oblique. I'm just worried about his durability. But like I said, it's the Rays. They'll find ways to get things done. I'm not going to put them in an A. I'm not going to put them in a C. I think they're right in the middle, to be completely honest. You're never really quite sure what they're going to do. But for me, I will go B tier. The Texas Rangers, man, oh man, adding Jacob deGrom is not too bad if you ask me. One of the best pitchers in the entire galaxy when he is healthy. But I don't see any reasons why he couldn't be healthy. He looked pretty good when he came back off the IL last year with the Mets. deGrom is deGrom. You do have other injury risks in this lineup as well, or in this rotation as well. Evaldi and Heaney, they had injuries last year. Can they put it all back together for this year? Perez, I'm wondering if he's going to regress a little bit this year. Last year, he was looking really good. But Perez, he's had his issues in the past. Is he past those issues? I'm not quite sure. But it's not a bad-looking rotation at all. I think it's a really good-looking rotation. There's a lot of upside here. If these guys are healthy, making their starts all year, this rotation, I think you could make an argument could be top 5. Like, that's how good this rotation could be. But a lot of things are going to have to come together. I definitely think they could be a top 10 rotation. At least the bullpen does scare me a little bit. I'm not too high on a lot of these guys in the bullpen. I think it needs work. They're going to have guys really step up for this year. But they do have some pieces in this lineup. I love Semien, Seager, Lau, and Garcia. Young is a young player that could be pretty decent. Jonah Heim got better last year, and he's good with the glove. I think there's some good pieces in this lineup. I'm still not too sold on the Rangers. I'm still waiting for a lot of these young guys to come up. Could we see Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker this year? I think that could be pretty fun. But for right now, the Rangers have definitely made a lot of improvements, but I still think they're at a C. Speaking of improved, how about the Minnesota Twins? I think they had a really underrated offseason. When you take a look at some of the additions that they made, Christian Vasquez, he's going to bring intangibles to this team. Good defense. He's going to be good with the pitching staff. Always love me some Christian Vasquez. But obviously the big move was bringing back Carlos Correa. That's not a bad bat to have in your lineup at all. Joey Gallo, that was a big name that you added, taking away the shift. Can he put his money where his mouth is, man? Can he walk the walk? Can he actually put up some really good numbers again without the shift? We'll just have to wait and see. But Joey Gallo, the potential is always there with him. Same thing with Max Kepler. The shift has hurt him a little bit. Let's see how he can do. Byron Buxton, this guy's got superstar potential all over him, but he's basically, in my opinion, he's just like a glass house. There's always risk that he's just going to break. I'd love to see a full season out of him. Can we get it this year? I don't know. Rotation, I think it's full of, threes. But, 3s and 4s, but I do like it overall. Lopez, Gray, Ryan, Maile, and Maeda coming back from Tommy John. It's a solid 1 through 5. I do feel like they're lacking like a clear-cut ace. Whenever I think of ace with the Twins, I think of Johan Santana. I feel like they're missing that. But, hey, I think this rotation is pretty good if you ask me. Love the back end of the bullpen. I love me some Lopez, Duran, and Jax. Theo Bar as well. Pagan, I think, is fine in the middle. I think it's a good Twins team. I think just like the Guardians and the White Sox, I see them as a B. I think these 3 teams, this is going to be a dogfight for the Central this year. I think it could come down to the last week with these 3 teams. I think they're all evenly matched. But for the Twins, I'm going to put them at a B. A team that scares me this year, the Toronto Blue Jays. Man, oh man, look out for the Toronto Blue Jays this year. This lineup is looking awesome. Last year, it was looking awesome too, but they had like no lefties in that lineup at all. Now they do. You added Dalton Varsho, one of my favorite players in the game. Brandon Belt, veteran guy, when healthy, that's a good bat to have. Kevin Kiermaier, good solid guy for defense out in center field. I like these 3 lefties that they added. Kind of dirt dog kind of players. I like that. But when you have a lineup with Vlad, with Bo Bichette, with Springer, with Kirk, Chapman's good for defense. Whit Merrifield, he has versatility. I like this lineup a lot for the Toronto Blue Jays. Their defense is going to be better this year. It wasn't great last year, but overall, I'm liking the offense a lot, even more than it was last year. Taking a look at the pitching, it's deep. You got 2 guys at the top here, Manoah, Gosman. You added Bassett, really good for the middle of that rotation. Barrios has bounce back potential all over him. Yusei Kikuchi. You're going to have Hayden Jim Ryu come back at some point. Could Kikuchi slide into the bullpen? He looked better in the bullpen, I think, last year, but he's looked pretty good this spring. But for the bullpen, this bullpen is improved. I love Romano, Swanson, Garcia back here, Anthony Bass. I think this is a pretty decent bullpen. Could you add another guy for this bullpen? Sure, but I think it's looking really good. With this Blue Jays team, I'm going to be honest with you, I really want to put them at an S tier. I'm going to hold off just for now. I'm going to put them at an A. To me, I want to just see how they start. I want to see how good they look in the beginning of the year. But I absolutely think it could be really quick that they move up to the S tier. But for right now, I'm going to stick with an A. Last but not least, the Washington Nationals. They're in rebuild mode like a few other teams here. But you got some fun young players I'm going to keep an eye out for. CJ Abrams, keep an eye out for him. Joey Meneses, not a young player, but he looked fun last year. He had himself a good year. When I'm thinking of other young players, I'm looking at Josiah Gray, Mackenzie Gore. Take a look for some of these other prospects in the minor leagues. Cade Cavalli, he's injured, so I'm not sure how long it's going to be before we see him. But keep your eyes out for James Wood. He looked really good in the minor leagues last year, especially after coming back in the Juan Soto trade. But there's just not a whole lot, to be completely honest, when I'm looking at the Washington Nationals. Another guy is Kyber Ruiz. Look out for him, switch hitting catcher. But, with the Nationals, there's just not a whole lot. Unfortunately, I have to end this video with an F. But those are my grades. Tell me what you think down below in the comments. Do any of these teams move up, down? Do you think they're just right? Let me know in the comments. But that's all I have for right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.